Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? Today we're going to be taking a look at a domain deck. And no, it's not going to be the weird, slow, control-y, search all the basics, whatever domain. We're doing it with aggro creatures. So yeah, some of those cards you've probably been figuring out where to put them, how they're going to work. Does domain really do anything? Well, we're about to go find out. So hopefully, creature-based domain is actually something in standard. Gotta give you the reminder that if you would like to support the channel, please hit that join button down below. In lieu of us having Patreon, to let you do it all right here on YouTube. There's different rewards and stuff, but also if you want to get your deck reviewed and get help, or if you want it featured here on the channel, there's an opportunity for the members. Now, if you want to protect all your nerd gear, check out ultrapro.com/PowrDragn. Use promo code PowrDragn and you'll save 5% at checkout, and they'll give a little love back here to the channel. Okay, so this list, we're going to be trying to do several things. The first thing is you have to figure out how are you going to get basic lands into play, and do they matter if you're going to not search them out? Because searching things out is going to slow you down from being an aggressive deck, right? So our lands are going to be very important. The other thing is, are we going to be okay with just 2 or 3 land types in play if we don't get them all into play? Because again, we're not going to be searching as many out. So we have to take care of those efficiencies along the way, or make efficiencies to take care of those inefficiencies along the way if we're going to make this work. So, starting at the top, we're playing Ascendant Pack Leader. And you're probably wondering why this has nothing to do with domain or whatever, but we do actually have some reasonable 4+ mana things that we want to play. And this allows us to do multiple spells in a turn, because there's going to be a lot of times we're trying to leave mana up to do a thing, and this still allows us something else to play. Gaia's Might. A lot of times this is going to be a +3, +4. So minimum it's a giant growth, but at best it's a +5, which we can get. So I don't know, let's see how this works out, because I think it has potential to do a lot of stuff out there. Lightning Strike, just to have some removal and maybe go to the face if we need to. Rada's Firebrand. This obviously is a domain card, and the cool part about this is if you can even get to just 3 consistently, just pay 3, and then your opponent can't block with a thing that's even 4 toughness or 4 power, so you can make it hard to stop this card. And you put your opponent in some weird situations where they just have to block awkwardly or leave weird creatures back, and it takes some of the pressure off of you, which is kind of nice. So yeah, we're going to run with a set of 3 of these and see if we can make it work. Neshoba Brawler, this is kind of the main reason to play this, right? This is going to be 3 or 4 power pretty much all the time. If we're not playing this, it doesn't make sense not to play the deck, right? This card's great. Then we're playing Quirion Beastcaller. This isn't really a domain card. However, because we're playing so many things with trample, being able to put counters on stuff is very powerful in this deck and creates even more weird blocks for your opponent. So, or, I mean, you're either playing like Firebrand or things that trample, right? So they either can't block or they're going to trample. And if you put counters on the Firebrand, that's even less stuff that can actually block it. So, yeah, we're all about this card in here. Iconoclast. It tramples, it has haste, it's filling a role. I don't know if it's the best card, but yeah, I do like this card, and the haste should come into play more often than not. Llanowar Green Widow. This is another domain card that kind of gets overlooked. And if we could get to where we can do the, we'll call it, I don't know, the flashback on this card, even for like 4 mana, that's still pretty good. Even 5 during those turns where we're just leaving mana up because we don't want to commit another creature and have it get swept. Doing that during the opponent's end step's pretty good. And remember, you can do this at instant speed. So if they decide to, I don't know, invoke Despair or play a Liliana and make you sack a creature, and you just want to sack something else and have a better body, you can go ahead and get this right out of the graveyard. So really cool, and it has reach because it's a spider and magic, and it has trample. So, again, if we can put bonuses on it, all the better. Speaking of which, Halana and Elena. I have a feeling every single time this card comes up, it's going to be great in this list. And yes, we know the card's already good, but the fact that pretty much all our stuff it tramples or is hard to block makes those counters that much more valuable. And there are even some scenarios where maybe we Gaia's Might Halana and Elena just to put bigger number of permanent counters on something else. So lots of choices there. And then Fleetfoot Dancer, tramples, lifelink, haste. The lifelink I think will be important. I don't totally know yet. We'll find out. But definitely having a 4/4 is a big deal, because a lot of our stuff is smaller toughness without some extra work. So wanted to include a few of these as well. Then we have Leyline Binding, because you're playing domain and you can cast white spells. You might as well be playing this card because the card's absurd. A lot of times you're going to be casting this for 2 or 3 mana. Doesn't matter that it's 6. And the cool thing is, this is the type of card that even if we play it on the cheap, still pumps up that pack leader that we were talking about from the very beginning, right? So this gives you another opportunity to do that even. Lands, we're going with the Plains, 2 Mountains, Boseiju, 4 Forests, 4 Carplusian Forests, 2 Rockfall Vale, 2 Overgrown Farmland, 2 Zeator's Proving Ground, 4 Jetmir's Garden, Aspara's Headquarters, and a couple of Evolving Wilds to help us get our basics out. Now, again, we're not going with Swamp and Island because we don't have anything to cast with those, and we'd really hate for those to come up the works early. But we do have Zeator's Proving Ground and Spara's Headquarters that do count for an island and count for swamps. So it is one way we can get to 5. It's not going to happen that often. We're really aiming to get to 3 regularly and sometimes to 4. But hey, if we get to 5, it's going to be the promised land. So that's how this is all going to shake out. But I have no doubt that by the end of the video, we're going to have updates to this for sure. So be sure to check that out because there's no way we got this right on the first try. So y'all go enjoy the games and I'll catch you on the back end of the video with the update. This was a pretty easy keep. Kind of going to play exactly what you expect we're going to play. Which, by the way, this is going to be fun for me to go back through with y'all because I was learning a lot while playing this deck. It plays a bit different than other creature decks I've been playing, so it's kind of neat. The decision trees are definitely different. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and play Beastcaller here because I'm just like, if you just have removal, you have it. I feel like this is going to be a case where the hasters are going to be more important post-sweepers here, so I didn't necessarily want to just run out the elf just yet. So spot removal incoming, and it was not spot removal, which really blew me away. But that does tell me that they don't have many quality spot removal things in hand, so they're using those to make sure they can kill the Beastcaller. Their stuff might even be sorcery speed, to be honest, which could be their other issue. Because then if we played a creature and then they decide to kill the Beastcaller, we get to put the counters on something. But then they played another one on the elf there, so I'm like, okay, what gives? So now I'm sure we're going to find out whatever the spot removal is they had here, because why else would that have come down that way? Then was Hero's Downfall. So now I'm wondering if they just drew the Hero's Downfall. But I don't know. Yeah, I was having a little bit of a tough time deciding how, like, did I want to just play the spider here or not? But I figure here, we get the 8-point life swing, and then we can still play spider plus something next turn. Alright, Cruelty of Gix. They are going to get to discard a card, but it's literally the card we can just get out of the graveyard, so we're not too worried about that. And the best part is we can leyline the Cruelty so they don't get to search for anything, which is kind of nice. This is thinning out the deck because we already kind of have all the mana we need to get the cheap spider into play. And that's actually huge because now that allows us to do both things. We don't even have to choose. So yeah, we can just get rid of that now. And yeah, I know we can do it at instant speed, but we don't want them doing that during their draw step. And then we just pass, and as long as there's nothing we need to kill with that lightning strike, we're going to go ahead and get a spider into play during their end step. Opponent's still at 9, so we don't really even have lethal as it stands. Plus, once they block with that, it'll replace itself with a 4/4. But one of the things you can do is if the opponent blocks, you can go ahead and shoot the blocker, and then because you have trample, all that damage is going to go through. That being said, we did find a Gaia's Might, and I think that's exactly lethal in this game. Either way we do it, right? We can attack, like I was saying, you can kill the Rhino, 8 damage gets through. Well, actually, you pump for 4 more, and then you have 12 total damage get through. Or you can pump one thing for 8, the opponent blocks, 5 tramples through, plus you have your other 4, that's 9, and then 3 from the lightning strike. And the opponent used the Yorgo, so they deserve what's about to happen to them. So yep, here it comes. Make that into an 8. That tramples down, opponent goes to 3. Their 4/4 is going to be on the stack, and we're just going to shoot them for 3. So yeah, that was a good start for this deck. Good start. Alright. Here's one that was actually a fairly easy keep, even though it looks a little odd because we don't have red mana, but we don't have any red cards in hand, so Yeah, and then of course we just draw one. But we don't need red mana for 3 more turns. Not really a big deal. My concern here is once you see black and white, all the removal cards are options, right? Whether you're talking about Fateful Absence, Infernal Grass, Cut Down, Wandering Emperor, whatever. Ley lines, right? They're all in play. So you kind of have to think about those here. And here I decided I was just going to play the Elf and see what the opponent does. I could have probably got away with the Beast Caller there, but because I had no idea what they were doing, and then actually Borrowed Time, which another removal we see, but I wasn't expecting that to be in the list. So that one surprised me a little bit. It surprised me enough that I started wondering is this an opponent playing on a budget? You know, potentially. And maybe they don't have like Fateful Absence or something. Or maybe they just don't really like it. You know, that's a possibility too. I almost used the Beseiju to get a creature back, but I said, nah, they look like they're a little bit tight on mana. I don't want to do that. So we play Pack Leader. We get to attack, see what they do. Now here the idea is, if they were to double block, then we remove the one that would allow them to draw a card, and then get in for 4. Actually, I guess we would have got in for 1 because we would have trampled over, but we would have cleared their board, which would have been pretty nice. But since they didn't block, it's kind of like, well, okay, I guess we go ahead and just play in a Shoba, and we have a 3/3 with trample. And it is pretty cool that these domain creatures are all like trampling, and it's actually pretty nice. Or like Radha's Firebrand makes something not block, you know, also good. So yeah, this actually got pretty interesting how this shaped up. Now I'm trying to figure out, if this isn't a budget list, then how do we play around like meat hooks and stuff? And it's like, just play the biggest thing you got. So that actually pumps up the Pack Leader, which is cool. And forces the opponent to double block pretty much our lifelinker, because why not? And then again, if they actually have the meat hook, then this is going to be the best block for them. And of course, we're going to put the damage on the Missionary because they can gain life over multiple turns, and killing that doesn't immediately draw the opponent a card. But look at our hand post-sweeper though, right? Let's say they do have a meat hook or something. We get to go Beast Caller into Firebrand and still have ley line up, which is very strong as a recovery mechanism. Here we're going to go ahead and just lose our Green Widow. I pretty much knew that as soon as the opponent played it. But notice the opponent's doing something very smart here, honestly. They're reading every card just to make sure, right? I know what this does, I know what this does, I know what this does. And I'm guilty of it sometimes too, where you just play too fast, and right after you make an action, you're like, oh, if I would have done one more thing, or I would have looked one more time. You know what I mean? So don't do that to yourself. It only takes like 3 or 4 more seconds. Just go ahead and make sure you're doing the right thing. Now here I was debating what to do, but I think I actually wanted to save the ley line for something like Shieldred if it comes down. Because now you're seeing the Wandering Emperors and stuff. This obviously isn't a budget list. But I was debating just which way to go, just to make sure I killed the Wandering Emperor. But what I decided to do here is just leave my hand how it was previously, because I actually like that setup. So go ahead and play this with Kicker. We can send that into the Wandering Emperor, since it'll still trample for 1. And then we can send the Shoba into the opponent. Now, I did almost send the Pack Leader there, but I decided, nah, because they're either going to block here and take a card, or they're just not, and they're going to take 3. And they opted not to. And maybe part of their mindset is, you know, since I haven't really done much else, as long as you have that, I can't really attack with my Pack Leader. Now, that could change, obviously, because I have ley lines, but... yeah, then here's where the opponent gets rid of Nashoba, I believe, because that's the best thing on the table. And the partner showed up on time. And this is one of the best things about having this in the deck, is just counters on trample creatures is huge. So again, we're going to go trampling into the Wandering Emperor. We're going to send 4 into the opponent. And this is just kind of how you doing, keep it moving.
Until next time, then.
All right. Opponent's at 15, and we're looking at ways to try to produce lethal here right now. And depending on what they do, we might be able to get there. So that we're not worried about. It does gain them a point of life, though. So that is important. Now, that's a card I knew existed, and I hadn't seen that card in ages. Honestly, I haven't seen anybody cast that in like 3 months. 4 months, probably. So this here, I'm just doing the math, and I realize, well, if I just discard Beast Caller, this is lethal. Because we've got 9 in play, plus 2 from Halana and Elena, so that's 11, right? But we get to play Firebrand, which comes in as a 3. And then Halana and Elena actually gets to pump it. And then, honestly, we could even pump it again, I guess, if we really wanted to. So, yeah. Didn't need to. Would have been overkill. But, yeah, another solid win compared to the way that started. This is a pretty interesting hand because it's playable. It's just not exciting. And you kind of get caught in a situation of, like, what do we play here? Right? Is it to play the Beast Caller, or do we play one of the elves? And here I decide to go with one of the elves just to test the waters first. Like, usually your first creature or two against these blue decks are going to get countered. If it doesn't, you're probably expecting a Fading Hope. And there's a Fading Hope. Now, when neither happens, it's like jackpot lottery time, right? But sort of knew that wasn't going to be the case there. Opponent's on 2 mana, but those decks can function without having a lot of mana, so I'm not getting too excited about that just yet. I do like having both of the Gaia's Mites or whatever here because it can create a lot of situations where the few creatures they do get that block, while they seem sizable on the face, are not going to necessarily be too powerful when you're +4, +5, you know? All right, they're impulsing here. My guess is just to find a land. Just to make sure they can stay on time. Yep. I think the only reason they didn't do that last time is because they wanted to try to syncopate something. Which wasn't really wrong. And honestly, had I thought about it, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Because if I wouldn't have paid Kicker, I would have just had the elf, but they would have just probably countered the next thing. Or they would have just impulsed on my turn or whatever. So it all kind of works out the same way. All right, so we got the Beast Caller down. And against the blue decks, you're almost never going to have your creatures truly removed. They're either going to be bounced or phased out. So don't hate this at all. Now it's a matter of just what do we think we can get away with. So I'm just saying, all right, let's just do this. Might as well pay the Kicker. You know, they either deal with the Beast Caller or they're going to take an extra 4 if they do. So that's fine. Beast Caller gets its counter, attack for 3. And it's kind of hard to believe that's the first damage that's happened here with all the cards and action that's been going on. And it's funny because our hand still looks full, but it's like we missed a land drop and they bounced one of our spells. All right, Haughty Djinn. Now this is where it starts getting serious because they start figuring out how much damage do I think we can get in or get away with here. So I decided to do this in case they block. Because then we could pump big enough to survive. Or if we really wanted to, we just let it die and then just put the counters on the Neshoba because it tramples. But this is a real decision. They decide to impulse, which I was like, okay. But maybe they just want to do that for more information before they block, because I totally understand that. I mean, I've done that more than once, that you just want to maximize the information you have available to you. Now, here is the tough part. There's some personal negotiations here with myself on if I want to blow these to try to get max damage in here and just put the opponent on blocking duty permanently. Because, I mean, we would have been able to do +6 there. So opponent would have been down to 7, and they would not have been able to attack. Which is a reasonable plan of attack, honestly. But I also was thinking about how are our future turns going to look, right? We have these ley lines in hand. Are we going to leave mana just for Leyline +1 Gaia's Might, or are we going to go ahead and do both, or whatever it is? So the Mites are pretty powerful here. Also, if we manage to resolve a Spider plus Might's pretty big against the Haughty Djinns. So it's a little tough. And then it's like, do we want to try to do it on their turn to remove a thing versus doing something on our turn? Like there were just so many things I was thinking about here. Unfortunately, we either needed a mana reduction or we needed an additional land, you know, to be able to play 2 spells here. So that's not going to happen. Or our 2 best spells, I should say. Yeah, and these situations are always interesting because, like, okay, well, do you want to stop our Beast Caller from being big and attacking you, or do you want to stop the thing that's going to block your Djinn? So I'm always really curious when we get into these types of scenarios. All right. And the other interesting thing here is when it resolves, I'm usually thinking, okay, you have some type of bounce spell, you're going to phase something out. Maybe you're going to untap your Djinn to try to block and be creative, you know. But we were still going to attack anyway. With the 2 mites in hand, we can't not attack. That's not even a realistic option. And with the Nishoba having trample. So it's not like we even give them a good block when we're holding the mites in hand. And I was like, okay, they spent quite a few cards there. Unfortunately, we don't have the mana untapped because that would have been a sweet spot to use a Leyline Binding. I almost GG'd. I thought about it, and I'm like, nah, we're not dead yet. I got this. We're still at 12. We're taking 1 hit. Now, admittedly, if they do have instants that aren't counters, we could be in trouble, right? If they, like, look at their top card, do whatever, you know, that could be a thing. So they didn't even play a spell, whatever the new thing is, to untap their thing and get an extra point of damage in. So I'm like, okay, I guess we're alive. Like, second Haughty Djinn. That's not great. Though, the opponent on 13 means they pretty much have to block here. And I know that. I just don't know if they know that. But that is 12, plus we have the 2 mites. So it's kind of like, let's see what happens. If they have a Fading Hope, this sucks for us. But what else were we going to do, you know? Especially being at 3. All right, so we're going to use one of these. Sorry, now, here's the best part. Because if they do have a counter or something or whatever for the Might, we have another one. So, sure. Okay, so there's a negate. And now this works out great. Because we just let that resolve. And then we can just remove the other Djinn that's not going to die in combat. That was like our window, basically. Now, I could protect something else here, but it's kind of like, why bother? I mean, we can, but we're better off saving it. And we just get to put counters on things here, which the blue deck's not really going to be able to deal with. I thought about putting them all on the Nishoba, but then I was like, we could just split them and have 2 creatures that are 5 power, and that just makes more sense. And then go ahead and just play the pack leader. So now we have lethal, unless they have multiple ways. Like, you know, they'd have to have another March or something. Something that deals with multiple things. But those decks don't play a lot of. Yep. And then that just did it. So that was a pretty good one, too. Alright. This one is a keeper, but boy, it is not the most pleasant. But we have to go ahead and play these, at least one tapped here early. Yeah, and that actually works out okay. And is this another blue deck? I think it is. Yeah. And sadly, our draw really doesn't come together nicely here. I wish we would have had another basic land type. One of our other tri-lands here would have been nice to get another point or 2 in. We'll see if this brawler resolves. It does not. It gets hit with the Make Disappear. One plays a Storm Chaser Drake. And we kind of have to have the 4th land. So, and Beseiju doesn't really kill anything in this fight anyway. Occasionally, they'll put like an aura on one of their guys, but you don't have a lot of targets. All right, so I was feeling pretty good here because I'm like, the opponent went to 10. Okay. What all's in their hand? Because this feels like we're being set up for something. Okay, they opted not to attack, which definitely, right on its face, felt fishy. Now, this is one of those times where it could be more beneficial to just play your cards out of the proper order, whereas you generally want to play Beastcaller first. But I kind of wanted to really make sure that we resolved the Rada's Firebrand too. Now, I didn't know at all how this combat was going to go. The fact that they left that back and, you know, I didn't know. Okay, they had a march. And they're just targeting their own thing just so they can draw a card here, which makes a lot of sense. So now it's like, okay, let me go ahead and play Beastcaller. Then we'll try this, see if you got a counter for this one. And then we know we're going to play at least one creature next turn, if not two. So, not too upset about that. My only real issue now is just like what was going to happen here on this particular turn. All right, we take 2, and they're going to target it to untap it. So we take 3, we go to 21. They play a land. And I was like, man, Green Widow's kind of hot here. So yeah, I think it's just how many of these do we want to run out? And honestly, I could have went Green Widow first, like that, but yeah, on that particular spot, I decided to Green Widow first, because I just figured, all right, this will be threatening enough that if they're going to do something, they're going to spend their mana countering this. So whatever they had planned to do during combat, they probably weren't going to get to do. And I was hoping that that worked out the way it was supposed to, right? And if they didn't counter that, then they deal whatever they're going to do, but we still have a Green Widow back to block, which is going to limit their options. And at that point, they would only had maybe one card left in hand, and I figured that was worth it. And we'd already gotten them low enough that we were in a pretty good spot. So, as it turns out, we're pretty good against the blue decks, which was a little bit surprising, but it worked out, I guess, with the number of threats that we had. All right, so we kept this one, and this was one of the concerns I had. I hadn't been running into a ton of mono red, maybe just like once a night or so, sometimes twice. And I figured this was going to be weak to mono red, and I was pretty sure we were right. And now that being said, I don't think I played this particular game optimally. I feel like I could have made some different choices along the way, but we were also kind of limited just because of the nature of the automaton and us needing some more mana. And the tough part here is because of the etchings of Kamano, it really puts you in a bad spot with stuff like your Green Widow on what you actually want to block or don't, because you won't be able to get it back. So you're kind of a one and done on that a lot of times. I think the best thing in this particular fight would be the Gaia's Might, truthfully. Because you could prevent their burn damage from killing stuff, and you could just get more quality combat blocks. Or, you know, even when they get in with something big like a Raiju, just being able to stonewall it is actually pretty huge. But the fact the opponent didn't immediately attack here, I found it very interesting, because it sort of told me, well, you don't even have artifacts in hand, or you would have just attacked. So this was pretty weird, just going through this and just being like, okay, well, what's happening? You're letting the rope run down, and I don't get it. Like, is it because you missed mana or something? I was like, are we just thinking about it? And then I thought, okay, maybe they're just AFK. I don't really know. But, like, how do you not have anything on this turn unless it's just burn damage that you don't want to waste on a pack leader? You know what I mean? It's the only thing I can think of. But who knows? All right, so we get our turn. And I'm assuming at this point, I guess the opponent's not there. I don't really know what happened. Nope, they are there. So yeah, just a weird sequence that they just decided to save their removal, which was smart. I mean, it did more damage to us, and it got rid of a 4/3, so Wasn't like their decision was terrible. I mean, it worked out. And now we're going to strangle a Duder. And only attack for 4, which basically tells me their hand is either... Well, I mean, it probably has to be removal, right? If it's not burn spells, it's land at that point. Because you'd have been even more incentivized to just play a Raiju there than even get rid of our dude. So here I'm just leaving open the options to either leyline something or shoot something with a lightning strike. That was a little disheartening to see if they got another automaton. So I was like, what are we going to do? But I'm just waiting here, giving the opponent the opportunity to do everything they're going to do so they're not making decisions with other information up. Though that being said, they didn't have many decisions to make there. And then we'll just pay the 2. But we are at 11, and we don't have anything on board at this point, which is pretty tough. And I was just debating, like, do I just play both creatures? Do I play Green Widow and leave some mana up to shoot a thing? But, like, I'm going to have to spend 4 to kill the automaton, and we know they don't have at least one artifact over there, so why not? But it's just, what are these cards, you know? Alright, that's a dude. And that is a lightning strike, so that pumps the other thing to a 2-3. Which does create a different problem, honestly. Is, you know, how much of our life total are we trying to preserve here? Do we want to kill off the 2-3 with this lightning strike to buy ourselves more time? And it's tough because we kind of like have to do it now so they don't get to respond to us doing it and turn that into a 3-4. But yeah, at this point, I'm not feeling great. I mean, we've kind of drawn lands for a few turns. Opponent's got other things in hand that I have no idea what they are. And all they have to do is attack us at this point. Yeah, we're already sub 10. So go to 9. Neshoba's kind of small, though, on the back end. I was really hoping to draw one of the Fleetfoot Dancers. That I felt like would have really turned stuff around if we could have got one of those. But opponent had another burn spell, put us to 7, and that's kind of the beginning of the end here, I think, with us just holding a land in hand. Really wish there were other options, but this is kind of all we had, so it wasn't great. Yep, and this was just like tough decision time, you know? Really, though, I probably should have just went ahead and blocked Squee there, and then they would have had to spend that turn getting Squee out of the yard. Only downside is if they would have drawn a burn spell, the other guy would have been big and would have been a problem, but it turns out they didn't. So I actually hurt myself by not blocking Squee sooner, because this extra 1 creature was actually a real issue with us being so low on life. And since the other guy was a 2-power and Squee was a 2-power, I should have just gotten rid of Squee, knowing we wouldn't have to see it for another turn. And that would have helped us out on this particular turn here, because we wouldn't have taken that 1 extra point. We would have been able to kill something else. We'd have still been at least 2 life, maybe 3 life, depending on how they decide to attack or not there. Because without that extra body coming in from Squee or whatnot, we would have also been able to kill the, the automaton. And that would have changed things too. But, like I said, I mean, at this point, we have to find another kill spell or the Fleetfoot Dancer. That's literally, I think, all we can draw here off the top. And they had a lightning strike anyway, so it was like, oh, okay, cool. So we were dead there. Okay. This is another hand that you kind of look at and say, okay, well, we do have at least 1 untapped land. So though we have these 3 tri-lands, it's not the worst thing, because again, it gives us the other basic land types that we need. So it seems fine, right? We're starting basically with the option to have 4 basic land types if we want them. Not that it matters, because all we're playing is a Iconoclast here, but you never know. So here's where I was expecting something big, but then the opponent did nothing, and I was a little confused. Because why would you try to get to 4 mana and then not do anything? So I'm assuming whatever we play here is just dead, right? So I'm like, let me attack first. See if they decide to use a removal card. They opted not to. I knew they weren't going to block. That wasn't a realistic option there. So here it's like, okay, maybe I get lucky and get a counter off the pack leader, and or the beast caller, and I'm at least turning this into a 3/3. All right, there's their spot removal. So that plan didn't work. And now the concern was, okay, they could meat hook there for a small amount, but then it was like, what the hell? All right, who plays this silverback guy? All right. And now in my head, I start running through, like, why are you playing Silverback Elder? Does the land matter? Does the life matter? Like, you obviously chose this particular card for a reason. What's the reason? But at the same time, they also have to have a fair number of creatures, I guess, to trigger it. So, yep, we really got nothing here. So they're just going to go search. Their thing comes into play. They make a treasure. And then all we can really do here is just say, you know what? We're going to pay the kicker on this, and I'm going to attack with everything that's got 3 power or more. Because along with the Gaia's Might, we could at least take down the Silverback whenever it blocks. So we can turn something into at least a 7 power. And the best part is whatever we turn into a 7 power is going to be bigger than 5 toughness. So we don't even trade with the Silverback. We just get to kill it. So this works out great. We get to kill it. We get some trample damage. We get to trample over the 3/3. Put the opponent at 11. And we kept the majority of our board, all things considered. And we can still get the Green Widow back. Now the 6/4, a little annoying. But then we got lucky and sick ripped a Leyline there. Which does pump the pack leader. And since you only have a 1/3, it's like, oh, let's see what other removal you got. I was really debating if I wanted to play Neshoba there or not. Like, I was just like, no. The only way you win is by sweeping the board, so that was a good one. Okay, this one's not too bad. Pretty easy keep here. It's just not terribly exciting, right? Because right now we're looking at, like, 1/3 Neshobas. Like, sometimes you play them because you got to play them, you know? But, yeah, with this hand, I'm like, this is not going to go well. Like, unless you draw at least multiple copies of removal or multiple copies of your Gaia's Might, these matchups are very tough. Very tough. So this is definitely one of the matchups we're going to have to make some changes in the deck list to try to accommodate. Now, this was tough, too, because I was trying to think about like how this game goes the rest of the way, and I was like, do we just play the other Neshoba here since we got the tri-land? Well, now since they killed the thing, I'm like, yeah, we definitely want to do that now. And worst case scenario, the opponent spends all their mana. Either they waste a removal card on Neshoba, or they spend a pile of mana killing a Neshoba. And we're kind of okay with both of those things. So I'm like, all right, I'm into it. Because they're doing nothing else here. The only way this is bad is if the opponent has a cut down for one of our next 2 creatures. But, I mean, sort of felt like if they do, they do. We can't do much about it. So, yeah, Beast Caller. I'm going to go ahead and play the Firebrand because that's just good to have out. And also here, if something like, say, Liliana were to come down, we could sacrifice the... Well, they're killing it for us. But by putting the counters on the Firebrand, it means then the opponent can't really block anything easily. So that's actually pretty nice for us. Though this got a little weird because I'm like, well, do we save to cycle? Do we want to just play a thing on taps? Like, what's the best thing to do here? And realistically, this is actually a mistake on my part, I think, here. I should have just attacked with everything and just say, all right, we'll just get the opponent down to some low number, right? We get the opponent down to, like, I guess another 4 there would have put them at 8. And that would have made a bit of a difference there. I mean, we could have even put them all the way down to 4 if we wanted to use the might. I don't think I would have, though. But there were definitely better options, considering right now they only have one real creature to block with. Because they're either blocking with the Bankbuster or they're blocking with the Underdog. And realistically, because we have the Firebrand, they're probably just blocking with Bankbuster. Because we can make we can make the Underdog not block, but then they could tap and crew the Bankbuster. So we're just going to be dealing with the Bankbuster no matter what. But if we would have had them at 8, that could have made a bit of a difference. So this was a tough spot too, because I didn't know what removal cards they had. And truthfully, a block here is actually kind of nice. Mostly for future turns, because you have to prove to me you have another creature to be able to keep crewing this Bankbuster. But they had a removal card anyway, like we thought. So now it's like, well, I guess we go ahead and cycle and just see what's up. And now it's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We're one short. We're one short. But again, had we had the opponent at 8 as opposed to 12, we could have just won here. Because here's the reality. If I'm not blocking, then I should have been attacking. So the fact that I didn't attack and I didn't block is just bad business. You know, so I could have won on that turn. So though this ended up being a loss, or at least I'm pretty sure this was a loss. I can't remember. Yeah, this is one of those turns like when they're attacking you for 4, you already know what's coming here, right? We're going to get hit with a Invoke Despair. But really, because I misplayed, I lost this. So the good news is this deck can beat a black deck even with a decent draw. All right. This is another one where I just looked at it and said, you know, it's just going to have to be good enough. Right? We have 2 lightning strikes, so that helps. I actually felt randomly pretty good whenever they played that, because I'm like, oh, well, we can just keep them from blocking. We're going to get some damage in for a couple turns. This is going to be sweet. Then I saw the red land and went, gosh, dang it. Thought it would be another, like, awkward blue deck or something. But it was not. And this actually was a bit concerning, because I don't have any of my things that block flyers in my hand. If I use removal on this, I'm actually making it more difficult on us for the next couple of creatures they might play. So now I'm just thinking about, like, what's the best thing I could do here? And in this case, it's just, they can't block. We're going to get to keep attacking. So they're going to have to use removal spells, which they probably have. They're playing red mana, right? They're going to have some type of shocks or whatever. Lightning strikes. That was a little bit annoying. This is like my punishment for playing the Firebrand instead of the Neshoba. Which I probably should have just played Neshoba, honestly. But as it turns out, I probably would have lost my Neshoba to an Antagonize. And I can't say anything because I'm a big fan of Antagonize, so hey, credit to the opponent. This was tough, though, because we didn't get our 4th land, and I was really banking on the strategy of play a creature, kill a thing. So now I have to really decide, like, is it worth it to play the Neshoba, or is it better to just kill a thing off here? And in all reality, it's probably better to just kill something off. The concern here, though, is because of their style of deck, I don't know if they're playing counters. They might be, just like, you know, aggression with some counter backup, which is totally realistic, honestly. But here I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to play a body. I'm going to leave the Neshoba back, and we'll just see if that's enough. Now, I almost left a second creature back, but I was trying to figure out what combinations kill us at 9 life. And it would have to be, well, exactly as I say, something with either another Antagonize or Double Strike, plus something to kill a Neshoba. So this actually does less than what I was expecting us to take on this turn. So this actually isn't terrible. They're only going to hit us for 6. Because fortunately, blades actually just give you double strike, but no other bonuses. Now, Halana Lena was sweet if we had a 4th land, because we'd be able to pump something and we'd be able to block something, which is great. But then I was like, wait, the opponent's at 11. We have 9 on board, plus I have lightning strikes, and they can't block. So I was like, wait a minute, I don't need a 4th land. But I was just like double checking here to just, wait a minute, can I just do this? And I was like, yes, we can. Also, randomly, with the opponent being at 11, there was actually another way I could have done this. I could have just pumped a Rada's Firebrand, I think. Because it's 6 minus 3, so I don't want to have to pay 3. So I guess I had multiple ways to win here, actually, is the way it turned out. But I'll take it just the same. Alright, so after doing all that, let's talk about where we ended up and why. I'm keeping the same number of pack leaders. I don't think I want to change that too much. A 4th one would be nice, but I don't think it's totally necessary. Gaia's Might. This thing was a superstar. Like, there were so few times I wasn't happy to draw this card. Like, it's good on defense, especially with so many things having like 2 or 3 toughness. It was good on offense because it made your opponent's blocks bad. It lets you take down a Shieldred. Tramples over to kill Planeswalkers. It's a finisher, you know, like this, even if it's just +2 or +3, that's still more than enough in this deck. So super happy about this card. I went ahead and took out the lightning strikes, though we did win at least one game specifically because it was a lightning strike. I wanted Fateful Absence. I wanted more just hard ways to kill the big creatures that were annoying, you know, something that's 4 or 5 toughness, get rid of a Planeswalker. Maybe it's wrong, you know, but I think I wanted to go down this road. It just felt like having a more surefire removal gives us more top deck options, right? Because right now it's just Leyline, and if we don't get the Leyline, it's pretty rough. So I'm back in on Fateful Absence. We're going to go to a full 4 Rada's Firebrand. There was more times where we could have pumped the Firebrand than I thought we were going to have alongside other stuff, and that made me want to have another one a lot. And also, if there's situations where I need to just give up a creature, sometimes giving that up over giving up a Beast Caller or something is pretty good, and this is threatening enough to the opponents that they want to deal with it. And sometimes it just lets you put your opponent in bad situations, right? They can't just leave back their like 2/2 token or something. They have to leave a real body back that's not attacking you. So that's actually pretty good too. So big fan of that. Obviously, we're keeping the Nishobas because that's kind of the whole purpose of the deck. If we cut the Nishobas, why are we even playing this? Quirion Beast Caller, we're still keeping. Still a good card. Green Widow, we're playing 3 still. We are going up on Halana and Alena. We're moving this to 3. Mostly because there's so many times if we could just get counters on the Tramplers, it's worth it. So, yeah, just want to make sure we get more of those on there. And then Fleetfoot Dancer, we're leaving at 3. Leyline Bindings, we're going to 4. So we did clean up the list a little bit. And it does mean we're not playing the Iconoclast anymore. And I don't think that's good or bad. I think if you're fans of it, or if you don't have, say, Halana Lena, or you don't have Fleetfoot Dancer, go ahead and play those. I think those are reasonable replacements. Not ideal, obviously, but they're not bad because of the trampling and because of the haste. And there are going to be times that I'm going to miss out on having those haste creatures in the deck, and I totally get it. But I felt like it was worth giving up. Like, with the situations we've been in, I just wanted to make sure we could just have more key cards to help us push over the top, and that Halana and that extra Firebrand are going to do that for us. So, moving on to lands, we cleaned up the lands a little bit. I took out the Evolving Wilds just because they only came up once or twice, and they were a little bit clunky. I also trimmed down the number of tap lands that we had, added in a few more basics, because we did have some slow early turns where we had to set some things up, and I want to just make sure there were more basics available to do that. And now we have only, 7 lands, technically 8 with Boseiju, because, you know, we do play it more as a land more than anything else, that don't have a basic land type. And that's the biggest thing. So this should play a lot better and should even help us out against the mono black decks. But again, if it doesn't work for you, feel free to add the Iconoclast back in, but I think this is a better way to go with the full set of Gaia's Mites and the Rada's Firebrands. So yeah, I have to admit, I wasn't really expecting all this out of the deck. I thought it might just be a mediocre like 50-50 build or something, but it actually held its own okay. I will say one of the weaknesses, which we addressed, playing those extra guys, mites and such, are the spot removal, especially burn damage type decks. They're going to cause a bit of a problem for us. But that was to be expected. I think what I was really surprised at is that my losses to the black or black base decks were usually just because of a misplay. Or one of them was a bad judgment decision, I guess, not really a misplay. But regardless, I think it sets up a situation to say that surprisingly, this can actually beat those decks. And I honestly thought those were going to be one of the decks we just couldn't beat. But, meh, kind of surprising. Now, I will admit, is that partially because Iconoclast was in the deck previously, and should we be making an adjustment for that? Quite possibly. Don't really know that answer. But I say if you want to, try either version, but I do like the second one for more matchups. Now for today's card spotlight, we're going to talk about Collective Restraint. Mostly because this was like the original Domain card that really annoyed people, but it wasn't super popular at the time in Standard. Just when it showed up, you hated playing against it. But now it's actually floating around periodically in Commander circles. Again, you don't see it a lot, but obviously you want it in 5-color decks. The interesting thing about it though is this is a card that hung around bulk for a long time, but I don't think people realize that if you want one of the original ones from Invasion, this is going to cost you over 15 bucks in most places. And even if you want one from the list, I think those are still $8 or $9. So this is way better than you think it is, and definitely not bulk. So it could be a good reason to go back through those Invasion bulk boxes if you still have any. I don't know, who has Invasion bulk boxes? Regardless, if you just have bulk, go through it. This is one of the cards you could find. Now, if you enjoyed today's deck and you like playing quirky creature things, well then check out this Naya Humans list we just put up, because this one's actually really good too, and it really handled its own on the Mythic Standard ladder. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.